Climate change policies will only widen the gap between the rich and the poor. On air 24/7. We're today's News Talk, TNT.
And welcome back to the Patrick Henningsen Show with me, Basil Valentine, sitting in for Patrick today, Tuesday, the 30th of July. I'm delighted to say I'm joined from London on the line now by Yousef Alhelou. Welcome to the program, Yousef.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yousef is a Palestinian freelance journalist and filmmaker, formerly based in Gaza. Yousef, we've all been hearing about the potential for a ceasefire for months, and yet the killing continues. Hamas have issued a statement saying that Israel keep inserting fresh clauses, fresh conditions into any ceasefire deal just when it appears to be close, which would give us the impression that Netanyahu and his negotiators are not acting in good faith and simply want the killing to continue, as he indicated in that absolutely dreadful spectacle in Congress last week.
Yes, well, Netanyahu is a thug. He doesn't act as a diplomat. He is in favor of prolonging this genocidal war because he wanted to crush the steadfastness and resilience of the Palestinian people as a whole, not only the resistance in Gaza. The 7th of October was a pretext to carry out this ethnic cleansing in order to change the demography of Gaza. And obviously Israel, the West, they consider Palestinian blood as cheap. We are numbers in their eyes. Unfortunately, the West is allowing this impunity to happen. Israel has never been held accountable. And it seems that Netanyahu doesn't want to leave the political scene without achieving an illusional victory. He claims that his genocidal war in Gaza aims to bring back the hostages, but he doesn't care about the hostages. He keeps adding more conditions to the deal mediated by Qatar, by other factors in the region, and even the United States. They see Netanyahu is disinterested in reaching a peace deal. What I would like to say is that Israel is bragging by saying that all Palestinians in Gaza, they don't deserve to have a normal life because they elected Hamas and because they celebrated what happened on the 7th of October. And they keep justifying their aggression on Gaza by saying that Hamas is using people as hostages. And I think he is embarrassed. He is in a very bad situation because for the past 10 months, the resistance, which is a legitimate right under international law, it seems that he is embarrassed because he did not achieve any of his stated goals. And it seems to me that he will continue this genocidal war in Gaza in order to stay in power. Israel is causing death and destruction in Gaza only for fun. Just as we speak right now, Israel struck Beirut, the Lebanese capital, and it shows that Israel doesn't care about the repercussions and the reactions of the resistance, Hezbollah resistance in Lebanon. Because I think he's being given the green light. He's given the weapons. Because during his speech in the Congress, he said, give us the tools and we will finish the job quickly. Unfortunately, the world is watching the Palestinians of Gaza being slaughtered for the past 10 months, and they do not change anything. Gaza has been under cruel siege for the past 18 years. Israel wanted this opportunity in order to test its new weapons in Gaza. In short, if you ask me how I feel about that, of course I'm outraged. As a Palestinian, my family in Gaza, they survived 300 days miraculously this genocidal war, but they are being starved to death. There is international conspiracy of silence, and the double standard policy and hypocrisy encourages Israel to continue this war. And Netanyahu, he will be remembered as the most evil fascist in our modern time.
But he certainly will be by me. John Mearsheimer said he thinks Israel is actually losing this war for all that tens of thousands of people have been murdered and mutilated. The Lancet, a very eminent publication in Britain, a medical publication, has estimated it could be more like 186,000. That was the number they came up with a couple of weeks ago that are dead, because we don't know how many people are under the rubble. We don't know how many people are injured. Counting system obviously has broken down. But in spite of those casualty figures, and Netanyahu may regard killing that number of people as some kind of success in his own ghoulish mind, Israel has not achieved its objectives. Hamas is still extant. It's still able to fight, cause problems for the Israelis. We don't know how many Israelis have been killed, but there's certainly a war weariness setting in. And he said that Israeli generals themselves want a ceasefire. It's the politicians that don't. First of all, if there is a ceasefire, do you think it'll be permanent? And, Netanyahu vowed to continue until Hamas had been completely eliminated, but without any idea of what that looks like. Does it mean killing everybody who's ever had anything to do with anybody in Hamas, and their sister and their children? That's what it seems like, Yousef.
Well, when they are asked that Israel is killing civilians, they say, well, this is the cost of war. Palestinians are collateral damage. And when we talk about the proportionalities, what's the number? I think Israel wants to kill 1,000 Palestinians for each Israeli who was killed during the 7th of October. So many people say, tend to the fact that it was an inside job, meaning that Israel knew about it, but it didn't happen in order to justify its attack on Gaza. Why it didn't protect itself or defend itself when it knew about that attack, and it delayed its engagement with the Palestinian resistance groups for several hours? I don't think Israel will allow Hamas to stay in power. That's why they are delaying and postponing the deal, because they are looking for an alternative party that is willing to rule Gaza. International forces, I don't think so. Maybe the Palestinian Authority forces, we still don't know. The end game here, what's next? What will happen when Israel ends its genocidal war? Gaza is still under Israeli control, under Israeli siege. Anything goes into Gaza or leaves Gaza has to be approved by the Israeli authorities, because they still brag and say that, well, we withdrew our forces back in September 2005. But as a matter of fact, Israel is still the occupying power, still imposes its naval blockade along Gaza's 45 kilometers, still controls the airspace of Gaza, still controls the resources of Gaza. Gaza is still practically under colonization. So any deal, I think it will be fragile. I don't think it will last for long. As long as there is no permanent solution to the problems in Gaza, the siege, the occupation, then we will continue to see the cycle of violence keeps happening again and again. Because remember, it wasn't about the 7th of October. Palestinians have been suffering ever since 1948 for the past 76 years. And Israel wants the world to believe that it's the Palestinians who are the aggressors and the victimizers, whereas Palestinians are the victims. This is the root cause of the issue. Palestinians are demanding for their freedom. They are not demanding to go back to before the 7th of October. After all these sacrifices, I don't think the Palestinian side, the resistance, they will just accept any conditions. There must be a permanent lifting of the siege and opening to all border crossings, and to allow Gaza to go back to normality. And also, any steps has to be taken. It should contribute towards a lasting settlement to this conflict and end to the Israeli occupation, not only in Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem as well.
Well, that would, of course, be in accordance with international law, something reaffirmed by the ICJ only last week. We're going to take a very short break now for the headlines. When we come back, I'm going to be asking Yousef about the hard choice facing the United States. Are we going to live in a jungle, or are we going to live under international law? We'll be right back.
Globalist agendas, democratic rights at risk, corruption, propaganda. It never stops. For the news and views silenced by the mainstream media, by government and corporations, vote 1. TNT Radio. Free speech always has a home here. Stay up to date with the latest live news and current affairs, delivered by our lineup of expert commentators and hosts. Listen to TNT Radio anywhere you go. Ask Alexa or Google to play TNT Radio, or download the TNT Radio app for free from the App Store or Google Play. Today's News Talk. This is TNT Radio.
And welcome back to the Patrick Henningsen Show with me, Basil Valentine, sitting in for Patrick today, Tuesday, the 30th of July. I'm delighted to say I'm joined on the line by Yousef Alhelou. Yousef, before we talk about international law and the double standards applied particularly by the West, first of all, you have family and friends in Gaza. We only see it on social media, corporate media, of course, largely blacking out the scale of the horror. It's been described as absolute hell on earth, children dying of heart attacks because they're terrified of the sound of the drones and the rockets. Can you give us a few examples from family and friends of some of the horrors? It's important because I do believe viewers and listeners around the world need to know just how bad the situation is.
The Palestinians of Gaza, they say that they are let down. They feel that they are frustrated and angry that the whole world is watching them being massacred day and night for the past almost 300 days. It's going to be almost a year. Can you imagine, like, for a whole year, Palestinians did not
I remember reporting on it in the early weeks when the number of dead was 3,000, 4,000, when people were being driven from the north out of Gaza City. You've got to get out of Gaza City. This was the stronghold. Move south. The south will be safe, so-called safe zones. Then they cut the territory in half. Who can forget that first bomb on a hospital? Pardon?
They know that they will not be held accountable. That's why, and also it's because of the hypocrisy and complicity of some of the Arab governments in the region, unfortunately. Gaza border is shut down from the Egyptian side, and you have, it's like normal life across the Arab world. The best they can do is just boycott. Israel, looks at them and say, look, the Arabs don't care about Palestinians. Where are the Muslims? As I said, non-Jewish, non-Muslim blood is cheap. What my family tells me, what people tells me is that they said that they will never forget the world, the Muslims, the Arabs in the region, that they are being butchered, massacred, starved to death, torn to pieces. Israel's beheading Palestinian babies and children as a result of the loud explosions and blasts. The destruction of schools, universities, mosques, churches, civil life. Is this really an excuse for self-defense? What this has to do with self-defense? When the starvation started, it was good news that they started drawing aid. But this aid, airdrop aid, has become a humiliation because many people drowned in the sea trying to grab the food parcels, or many of those parachutes fell on tents. And the scenes of Nakba, the displacement and the refugees and the panic and the shootings and the snipers, I can't imagine. It's really for fun. Soldiers in their 20s, they just, kill at will, just for fun. Snipers, they can see.
Indeed, that came out in 972.
Women, children.
That's right. That came out in 972 magazine. Eyewitness reports and confessions, indeed, from Israeli soldiers saying they just go out shooting people when they get bored. That any man is a potential target. And then, of course, there were the American doctors that came back the other day and said that they're shooting children in the head twice, at the very least. And arguably the worst of all, the drones playing the sound of babies and children crying so that people venture out onto the streets to see if they can find the distraught infants, only to find that it's simply a recording being played by the Israelis, and they are then shot. This is
what they tell me. It's horrendous. It's horrific. It's scary. It's worrying that people did not have. Some people did not have a shower for months. Did not have a proper sleep for so long, the psychological impact, the stress. Displaced people in tents, they live next to sewage. There's so much disease around them. The garbage fills the streets. It's like people are dying slowly in Gaza. And, you are doing good journalism. I would like to salute you for this, for bringing the real issues here. Because once I was interviewed by one of the UK shows, talk radio show by Dumb and Dumber, and they kept asking me, do you condemn Hamas? What do you think of the 7th of October? As if my answer is going to bring back to life the 40,000 Palestinians killed. As if my answer, if I yes or no, is going to bring Gaza back to normality. The real issues here is that Israel enjoys this impunity. It keeps humiliating Palestinians. It doesn't see Palestinians as humans. When they describe us as human animals and describe Palestinian children as children of darkness, then what do you expect? The evil mentality, the settlers in the West Bank with the torch Palestinian olive groves, when they attack shepherds, when they just occupy Palestinian houses, they are given these arms by Gvir, who is arming the settlers. So the suffering of Palestinians does not only happen in Gaza, but also across the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And Israel's intention is to drive Palestinians out of the land because it wants a pure Jewish state. It angers Israel to see Palestinians are growing by numbers, because before this genocidal war, they used to say Gaza is a ticking bomb. Gaza is the most densely populated area on the planet. So it posed some threat to Israel. So they are making life miserable by destroying the civil infrastructure. In case there is a chance for people to Gaza to flee via the sea, via Egypt, then yes, it's going to happen. Thousands of people will flee Gaza, but some people will not, heed the call and leave Gaza because they say, we would rather die in Gaza. So Israel is going to fail miserably. It's not going to achieve any political gain, any military gain, because at the end of the day, when you have the owners of the land, the indigenous Palestinians, they say, this is our land. We are not going anywhere. We are not going to vanish.
No, absolutely. One thing I would say is that I don't think the Israelis expected the backlash in public opinion, not just in the global south, but in the West. Hence the mendacious attempts to label people calling for an end to genocide as terrorist supporters. This is really sinister stuff when you simply want to see the even-handed application of universal human rights and the implementation of international law, something that's completely alien to the Israelis, who, as you say, have acted with total impunity. Now, there's a piece in Al Jazeera just published this week, which talks about the crunch that's coming, really, Yousef. It's as simple as that, because sooner or later there will be a ceasefire. The mantra from the United States is still two-state solution, two-state solution. That's still the official view of the European Union, the United Kingdom, all the major players, really. And yet, on the other hand, we know that the Israeli position now is that there will never be a Palestinian state. We've got irresistible force meeting immovable object. And on top of it, of course, the fact, just, as if we didn't know, that the occupation is illegal and therefore must come to an end. And that, is the West actually going to wake up to the fact that it has to apply law evenly, or are we going to live permanently with a two-tier system of international justice? That would be hell on earth.
Yeah, as long as there is no pressure on Israel, it will never relinquish its occupation. It will never end its occupation. And Netanyahu said many times that he will not allow the establishment of a Palestinian sovereign state, not even a viable state. The two-state solution was born dead a long time ago. The Israeli ambassador to the UK, she said that. But I have a problem here. If the EU, they are not able to pressure Israel to end this genocidal war that kills innocent civilians, are they really going to be able to pressure Israel to end its prolonged occupation?
That's a
they
very
have
good
to
point.
End arms embargo. They have to put serious pressure. Apartheid South Africa did not heed accept the pressure. I mean, without the pressure, Israel will continue its colonialist policies. And as long as the U.S. Sponsors Israel's supports Israel financially, militarily, economically, diplomatically, Israel will keep going. The UN Security Council is useless. The United Nations, Palestinians say, is not helping. Israel, the Israeli ambassador the other day, when he tore the Charter of the United Nations, that was an insult. When they insult Guterres because he dared and said the 7th of October did not happen in a vacuum, the Israelis, they don't like to see anybody shows solidarity and sympathy with the Palestinians. They describe them as anti-Semitic. That they play this card straight away. Even some politicians in the West, like in the UK, for example, that lady when she described Patel Palestinian marches in London as hate marches. They just want to discourage people from showing solidarity because they know that they are losing. There is awakening in the West. It's a wake-up call. Young people, when they organize these encampments at universities worldwide, it's worrying. These sacrifices that the Palestinians are doing. We didn't choose this genocidal war. It was imposed on the Palestinians. Israel is collectively punishing. I have a serious problem with Israel. Israel is collectively punishing an entire population because of the acts of Hamas, of the resistance. Why on earth would Israel, destroy civil life, destruction of houses, universities, mosques, as I said, hospitals, water wells, electricity grids? Everything is being destroyed in Gaza. Is this for self-defense? When you collectively punish an entire population and orphan over 20,000 kids, do you think these kids, when they grow up, they will just forget what Israel did to them? Israel is shooting itself in the head, not in the foot. It's not going to win this war. It's already lost the online war. It is losing this practical war. And I think so many Jews also, they say, not in our name. And so many Jewish people are worried. They say that Israel is actually damaging the Zionist project, which is, peace has to be made. And in order to make peace, concessions have to be made. Israel is arrogant, pariah, rogue state, and it has to be pressured to end this occupation.
Indeed, it does. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'm going to ask Yousef about the Israeli inquest into the alleged abuse of Palestinian detainees, which has bizarrely sparked fury on the far right, who, of course, think that abuse of Palestinian detainees is all well and good. We'll be right back after this short break.
Patrick Henningsen and TNT.
And this is Basil Valentine singing in for Patrick. I'm joined by Yousef Alhelou. This is the last segment of the program. Fully 2 months ago, prisoners held at an Israeli detention camp in the Negev desert were revealed to be subjected to widespread physical and mental abuses, with at least one reported case of a man having his limb amputated as a result of injuries sustained from constant handcuffing. Whistleblowers went on to describe how inmates are regularly shackled to hospital beds, blindfolded and forced to wear nappies. Since then, of course, Yousef, we've heard about people being killed by having electrical rods rammed up their backsides, children being raped, just a complete list of horrors. And yet, it seems when the Israeli authorities these are the Israeli authorities committing these crimes, but when there is any sort of investigation, the far right object. It's off the charts, isn't it? I want to know when we're going to see Western politicians condemning this sort of thing, because they all just look the other way, don't they, Yousef?
I think Israel is allowed to do whatever it wants. That's why Israel is laughing at the wall. It does heinous crimes. When they humiliate these prisoners of war in Gaza, or the captives. Thousands of Palestinian innocent civilians were taken captives from inside Gaza. You've seen these videos when they were stripped naked and, marched in front of tanks and at the back of trucks. You've seen also some of those who were released, how they were tortured severely. According to an international human rights organization, in Gaza, they documented 85 Palestinian civilians who were killed inside Israeli detention centers and in prisons just recently during this genocidal war. You're talking about severe measures taken by the Israeli authorities, jail authorities, and Ben Gvir himself, he entered a cell, according to one of the released Palestinians, and he tortured that inmate. You're talking about at least now the number has increased from 7,000 Palestinian political prisoners held in Israeli jails up to 15,000, including 300 plus Palestinian children, minors, and women. These are hostages inside Israeli jails, and Israel keeps talking about its hostages in Gaza. What about those who are being held without charge or trial? They are being held, without any accusation. And the treatment that they receive is horrendous. Some people, they go to prison in good shape, muscles and stuff, and they just leave the prison or the detention center after a few months. You cannot recognize them. One of the mothers, she couldn't recognize her son. So this systematic mistreatment and torture aims to crush the spiritual and moral and steadfastness of Palestinians. Israel is training on Palestinians. And when I say Israel transformed Gaza into a testing ground, we mean it. They test their weapons, they test their techniques, they test their mistreatment. And many of those who were released recently, one of the witnesses, actually, he is an old man, and he talked about how a young man, he was sexually harassed by a soldier and by a piece of wood in his bottom. I mean, it's so shocking. I mean, I cannot understand in the 21st century that human beings are subjecting other fellow human beings to this severe, cruel mistreatment. It's psychological, it's physical, and Israel wants to send a message to the Palestinian resistance that, look, this is going to be your fate.
This particular incident was sparked when the Office of the Advocate General of the Israeli military ordered an inquiry following the suspected substantial abuse of a detainee at the SD Taiman facility, which holds Palestinian detainees, including alleged members of Hamas's elite Nukba forces. Israeli Army Radio said military police arrived at SD Taiman as part of their investigation into 10 IDF reserve soldiers who had been suspected of abusing the prisoner. The alleged abuse took place 3 weeks ago, and the detainee was found in a very serious condition, requiring his evacuation to a nearby hospital where he underwent surgery. 9 soldiers were detained, accused of serious abuse of a detainee, according to Army Radio. But the operation triggered an angry confrontation between the military police and IDF soldiers, which was captured on video by a reporter. And these detentions themselves prompted an outcry from members of Israel's far right, including a coalition of extreme right members of parliament and their supporters who attempted to storm the military base in protest. I mean, this is off the charts stuff. You only get sort of either, fascists or people to homicidal psychopaths these days in Israel, it seems. What on earth happened to the so-called liberal Zionism? Why on earth now do they behave in this abysmal way?
Yeah, I think the Israeli society is collapsing, is being torn apart. I mean, many Israelis, they warn that the fabric of the Israeli society is collapsing, because when you have these, soldiers or even parliamentarians or politicians that storm a court because it wants to try some of those reservists for violating the law, subjecting some Palestinian inmates to torture. This shows that they disregard Palestinian lives. I mean, they don't want to be held accountable for killing Palestinians. I mean, so many cases were documented. I mean, 5-6 devastating wars in Gaza, in the West Bank, and endless cycle of violence. And those who commit their crimes, they are released without a trial of charge. And I think one of Israeli official, he actually said that he wants Netanyahu to put pressure on Ben-Gvir in order not to intervene in politics, because he is spitting poison. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, those two fanatics, the most extreme politicians in Israel's history, in addition to Netanyahu. When you have this extreme government, what do you expect? They are indoctrinating the Israeli society. They are brainwashing the Israeli society. When these Israelis, they march in the streets of Jerusalem and they say death to Arab, death to Muslims, and they insult Islam, and they burn the Islamic flag. What do you expect? I mean, you have violence, you have extremism in the Israeli society. Do you think peace is attainable with these people? I mean, Palestinians are willing to accept any sort of normalize. I mean, a peaceful settlement. One state solution is the only option, I believe. There are so many Palestinians believe in this option. Two-state solution is not going to work. One democratic secular state for everyone, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, color, to live side by side in coexistence. Israel is not going to accept this solution because it wants to maintain its Jewishness and it doesn't trust Palestinians.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, as we do in this country, the idea that one group should be privileged over another in the United Kingdom is abhorrent. Yet it's taken as read in Israel and nowhere else in the world these days. But Nathan Sachs is the head of the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institute in Washington, and he called the protests at the detention of the soldiers accused of this terrible abuse as a sign of a very, very troubled time. I am very worried about the tensions that this reflects in society, in Israeli society, he should have said. So on the one hand, we have that. And on the other hand, the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, noted, in a world of constant and increasing violations of international law, it is our moral duty to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to all ICJ decisions in a consistent manner, irrespective of the subject in question. Now, if you put those two things together, the comment about the troubled state of Israeli society and then the requirement of the European Union, just fine words, of course, to implement international law irrespective of the subject in question, you've got a recipe for a collision which is probably a year or two down the road, Yousef? Or do you think the West will continue kowtowing to the Israelis? Have the tectonic plates shifted enough for us to see the imposition of a peace settlement, or are we going to go back to the oppression and the apartheid and the slow motion genocide rather than a fast one, which is going on now?
I think many politicians in the Western world, many Western governments, they are coward to say stop to it.
Yes, that's it. They're cowards. You're absolutely right.
They are cowards, and they are afraid from being blackmailed, threatened, being described as anti-Semitic. They wanna enjoy their power and money and so on. They say it's Palestine, Gaza is not my issue. Why should I care? Unfortunately, we have this double standard policy. When comparing Gaza, Palestine to Ukraine, you can tell the difference. Palestinians are not white, not Christians, Muslims compared to Ukrainians. With due respect, the UK hosting received almost 300,000 Palestinian Ukrainians, and we Palestinians, Gaza British citizens, we have been, pressuring the UK government to bring our families to safety, even at timber bases, and our demand was rejected, despite the fact that we gathered almost over 120,000 votes, signatures. So I think the Zionist project is declining, and I think Israel has shot itself many times in the head and in the foot. And I think so many Jews are frustrated. They see not in our names, and there is a reverse migration from Israel into Europe. But I think Europe is worried, and the US is worried from Israel's collapse, because when Jews leave Palestine, occupied Palestine, this will cause instability in Europe. So this is going to be an issue. That's why the West is in favor of the existence of Israel in the heart of the Middle East. It's a hub. It's an American hub. It's a hub for espionage campaigns on the Arab, to divide the Arab region and stuff. The Arab nations, they said that they are willing to normalize ties with Israel. The Saudis, the Emiratis already did, the Moroccans, and so on. But Israel is arrogant. They are not interested to relinquish their occupation because they say that they were promised this land by God. What kind of God that orders you to kill God's creation in order to have a land back that you claim you existed 3,000, 10,000 years ago? I mean, there is contradiction when they say the Zionist project is a secular movement, and then when they say they were promised this land by God. I mean, there's contradiction here, right?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Ilan Pappé said most Zionists are atheists. They don't believe in God, but they do believe he promised them Palestine, such is the level of sort of idiocy and arrogance that we're dealing with, quite frankly. I mean,
it's difficult to strike peace with the Israelis.
What if the Romans turned up in Britain and said, we were here 2,000 years ago, we're entitled to this land?
Yeah, Bath, city of Bath,
we're going to start erecting temples to Jupiter again,
It's just life is too short. I tell one of the interviews, I said, life is too short. Like, really, people are thinking, researching how to reach Jupiter and Mars and Moon. And some people, they are selfish and they are arrogant and they just want to start wars and sell weapons and medicine. And why? I mean, you should just end the occupation, live in peace with your neighbors. That's it, and you'll be accepted. End of the story. But they're not willing to do that.
Well, one would hope so. In fact, we can finish on what Nicholas Soames said. He's not in the government anymore, but it's to be hoped that this is what the establishment in the West, or the more enlightened branches of it, at least, are thinking about. We can either cast aside selective blindness. He was referring, of course, to the blindness towards the occupation after this latest ICJ ruling last week. We can either cast aside selective blindness, recognize and act upon rule of law without fear or favor, however difficult it may be, or we can continue in determined blindness. But if we do the latter, we must know that we are jettisoning an order that was hard won. We cannot be surprised when other world actors replace it, and we cannot be surprised at the consequences that follow.
I would like to add something here.
Please do.
Israel is a bright state, it's called a state, and the UK must play its historical responsibilities to end its genocide in Gaza.
Indeed, the UK does have a historic responsibility. Well said, Yousef. Yousef Alhelou, thank you so much for joining us today. We're out of time. I'll be back same time tomorrow. Don't go away. More great content as always on TNT after the news. See you tomorrow.